In this video, we're going to complete example 4. We're going to learn how to add and subtract fractions. Now, for a lot of you, you've been answering questions like this for a while. In fact, you're probably at the point where you just use a calculator when you add and subtract fractions. In this video, I'm going to teach you some new techniques that you probably haven't seen before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to relate addition and subtraction of fractions to lowest common multiples, and I'm going to show you how to find your lowest common multiples using your prime factors. So we'll get right into question A. Here we have 3 over 8 plus 1 over 12. In order to add these fractions, we need to make the denominators the same first. So we'll start by taking our denominators 8 and 12 and listing some multiples for 8 and 12. Now, multiples are basically your times tables. So here we've got 8 times 1 is 8, and then 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 3, 24. Then we've got 32, 40, 48, 56, and so on. We can now list our multiples for 12, which are, once again, basically our times tables. 12 times 1 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24, times 3 is 36, times 4 is 48. Now, I could keep going here, I could go on forever, but I feel this is a good point to stop. And the reason I feel I should stop here is because I already have a couple of common multiples. We share the common multiples 24 and also the common multiples 48. Now, looking back at our fraction, I mentioned earlier that we want to make the denominators the same. And the question always is, what denominator do I need to change the 8 and 12 into? In order to do that, I need to find a common multiple, which I have already. So I could turn it into the common multiple 24 or 48, or if I was to keep going, I could find other common multiples here. So which common multiple do I pick? Well, the best common multiple is known as the lowest common multiple. So I want to change my 8 and 12 and I want to turn them into 24 because that's the lowest or smallest common multiple for both 8 and 12. So how do I change my 8 and my 12 so that they both become 24? Well, I just need to multiply them by some number. For the 8, I would multiply it by 3 because 8 times 3 is 24. Now, whenever you multiply the denominator by a number, you have to multiply the numerator by the exact same number. So we have to multiply the 3 by 3 as well. Looking at the 12, in order to turn this into 24, I need to multiply the 12 by 2. I also need to multiply the numerator by 2 as well. What does this give me? 3 times 3 is 9, and that will be over 24. So 9 over 24 plus 1 times 2 is 2, and that will be 2 over 24 as well. Now that our denominators are the same, it's really easy to add our fractions. 9 plus 2 is 11, and the denominators always stay the same. They will stay as 24. Now we've come up with our final answer, and the good thing about this answer is it doesn't need to be simplified any further. If I hadn't picked my lowest common multiple, let's say I picked 48 instead, I still would have come up with a correct answer, but I would have had to have simplified it at the end. Now, I mentioned before that I wanted to show you how to find the lowest common multiple using your prime factors. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our 8 and 12 again, and instead of listing multiples, we're going to list the prime factors for both 8 and 12. The prime factors for 8 are 2 times 2 times 2. The prime factors for 12 are 2 times 2 times 3. Now I want to multiply both these numbers by some number so that they both become the same. Over here on the left, we changed the 8 and the 12 by multiplying by some number, and they both became 24. Now, when I focus on the prime factors, you'll notice that they're different. And if I can make it so that they are the same set of prime factors, then both numbers are the same. Notice on the right that we're multiplying by 3, but not on the left. If I want them to be the same, I need them both to have a factor of 3. Notice on the left I had 3 2's, but only 2 on the right. If I want them both to be the same, then I need to multiply the one on the right by 2 as well. If I have the same set of prime factors, well, that means that they're both the same number. What is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3? Well, funnily enough, it's 24. So by simply adding in some extra prime factors here so that they're exactly the same, we end up with our lowest common multiple, 24. And not only have we come up with our lowest common multiple, but we've also come up with the number that we need to multiply by. What do I mean by that? Well, look here in red. I need to multiply my 8 by 3 to get 24. That's exactly what I did here on the fraction. I need to multiply my 12 by 2 to get 24. That's exactly what I did here on my fraction as well. So we're going to move on to questions B and C now. And this time, rather than listing my common multiples, I'm going to list my prime factors and solve my questions that way. So we'll start with a blank slate. And the first thing I need to do for question B is change this mixed numeral into an improper fraction. It's just going to make my life a little bit easier. So we're going to multiply first and add second. 11 times 1 is 11, plus 5 is 16. So we get the fraction 16 over 11, and for our first fraction, 3 over 14. So we need to make the denominators the same, and in order to do that, I need to list the prime factors for both 14 and 11. The prime factors for 14 are 2 times 7, and 11 is in itself a prime number, so we'll just write 11 as its prime factor here. So we want to make these numbers the same, which means we need to have the exact same set of prime factors here. Over this side we have an 11, but we don't on this side, so I need to multiply this by 11. On the right hand side we have an 11, but not a 7 or a 2. So we need to multiply by both a 2 and a 7 so that we have the same set of prime factors. These numbers are now both the same. 2 times 7 is 14, and 14 times 11 gives me 154. So that's my lowest common multiple. Now some of you might be looking at this and going, that's quite a high lowest common multiple. And you might think, I reckon I can find a smaller lowest common multiple. But I can guarantee you that you won't. And the reason I can guarantee you this is because when you use the prime factor method, which I've shown you here, you are guaranteed to get the lowest common multiple. You will not find one smaller than this. Anyway, moving back to the question, we need to make the 14 and the 11 into 154. So what do we multiply these numbers by? Well, all we need to do is look over here on the left. We ended up multiplying our 14 by 11. That's what we can see here in red. So I'm going to multiply my 14 by 11 as well as the numerator, the 3. 11 times 3 will give me 33. And 11 times 14 is 154. So I get my lowest common multiple. What am I going to multiply the second fraction by? Well, looking at my 11 here, I multiplied it by 2 and 7. Now, 2 times 7 is just 14. So I'm multiplying the denominator by 14 as well as the numerator by 14. What do I get when I do that? Well, I think this is one of those cases where I'm going to cheat a little. 16 times 14 is 224. And for my denominator, 11 times 14 is 154. I get my lowest common multiple. All right, our denominators are the same, so we can now subtract our fractions. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to bring up my calculator because I always worry that I'm going to get it wrong. 33 minus 224. When you're in an exam, you really just want to use a calculator because you don't want to make those little mistakes. We get negative 191. So negative 191, and our denominator stays the same. It's 154. Now I'm going to bring up my calculator again because it's quite hard to simplify fractions and I want to save time. So 191 over 154. Now it's given it to me as a mixed numeral. I'm just going to go second function ABC, and you can see that the fraction remains the same. So it's already in its simplest form. Anyway, it's time to move on to question C. So we'll start with a blank slate again. So this time we're looking at the numbers 90 and 84, and we're looking for the lowest common multiple for both of these numbers. So what are the prime factors for 90? Well, I'm really going to have to use a factor tree here. 9 times 10 makes 90. Branching out from the 9, 3 times 3 makes 9, both of which are prime factors, so I'm going to circle them. And for the 10, 2 times 5 makes 10, and both of these numbers are also prime factors. So I now have a list of all my prime factors. 3 times 3 times 2 times 5. I'm going to actually list them in order. 2 times 3 times 3 times 5. All right, looking at 84 this time, what are two numbers that multiply to make 84? Well, 42 times 2 makes 84. 2 is prime, so I'm going to circle it. To make 42, 7 times 6 makes 42. 7 is prime. And to make 6, 3 times 2 makes 6, and both of these numbers are prime. So our prime factors are 2 times 2 times 3 times 7. I'm going to list them below in order. 2 times 2 times 3 times 7. Now when we compare our list of prime factors, you'll notice that one of them has a 7 and the other doesn't. So we're going to fix that because we want the same list of prime factors here. You'll also notice that one of them has 2 2's and one only has 1. So we're going to multiply by a 2 over here. You'll notice that we have 2 3's here and only 1 3 over here. So I need to multiply by another 3. And you'll also notice that we have 1 5 here, but not over here on the right. So I need to multiply by 5. We now have the exact same list of prime factors here. 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 5 times 7. Now this is one of those moments where I really just want to use a calculator to ensure that I get it correct. Times 3 times 3 times 5 times 7, and we get 1,260. And that's a really large number. But it is our lowest common multiple. I can guarantee you that it is because I use this prime factor method, and it will always give you the lowest common multiple every time. So looking at our fractions here, how do I make 90 into 1,260? Well, you can see in red we times by 2 and 7. 2 times 7 is 14. So we're multiplying our 90 by 14, as well as our 11. And if you're questioning me on that, we can always double check it. Is 14 times 90 going to give us 1,260? Yes, it is. What's 14 times 11? That's actually 154. So we get 154 over 1,260. What do we multiply the 84 by? Well, looking over here in red, we ended up multiplying by 3 and 5, which makes 15. So we're multiplying this fraction by 15, both the numerator and the denominator. We can even double check that. 84 times 15 does equal 1,260. So 1,260. And then 5 times 15 will give us 75. So I know the denominators will stay the same. They will stay as 1,260. What do I get when I add 154 to 75? I'm going to get 229. Now, I want to double check to see if this fraction is in its simplest form. So 229 over 1,260 does not simplify, so it's in its simplest form. And quite often, not all the time, but quite often when you find that lowest common multiple, you end up with a fraction that doesn't need to be simplified at the end. Anyway, that concludes our video on example 4. Remember to read the description below for links to workbooklets that relate to this video.